Welcome back to the channel. It has been a while since our last video. If you're new here, I'm Renna. I'm a high school and college math tutor with over 11 years now experience teaching internationally. And in this video, I want to talk about a couple reasons why learning math in a classroom setting can often seem more difficult than it actually is. So to celebrate more than a decade in education, this is 10 reasons why classroom math is still hard in 2025. Starting off strong with reason number 1, it is a numbers game. Bad math pun aside, you might be comparing yourself to the wrong students. Students come into a classroom with all sorts of advantages and head starts, and that includes all sorts of things like after-school programs and math tutors and summer intensive programs and math clubs and parents who could be mathematicians and physicists and engineers who can help out their kids and their students in really, really large ways. And so when students enter a classroom with you, they can have up to hundreds, if not thousands of hours in extreme cases of additional time spent doing math. And if you see these students, they can appear to be like cruising through your math classes with little to no effort. They're just not struggling with the concepts like you. And the truth is, kind of counterintuitively, that they are the students putting in the most time and the most effort, just not when you can see it, oftentimes years before they get into a classroom with you. And so you should just know it's not like innate math talent or math genius, it's just a lot of time spent doing math. In my own personal experience, I've worked with students to help them learn entire 2-year math curriculums before the very first day of class. So they're on cycle 2 when you're on cycle 1. We'll talk about cycles of learning. And reason number 9, I've seen students do summer intensive programs, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week, 4 to 6 weeks, just prepping for their ACTs or just prepping for their SATs, and they'll go on to get above a 34 or like above a 1500 on their first attempt. And so it really is a matter of what you put in is what you get out, and then also not all hours are the same or equivalent, and we'll talk about that as we move through this video. The big takeaway here with reason number 1 is that you should not compare yourself to these S-tier, S-class students. You will feel perpetually behind. You will feel like you're struggling and they're not. And you really should be comparing yourself to like the average students in the class or the students who are getting A's, but they're really just studying, within the bounds of that class. They're not putting in a bunch of extra time outside of their math classes. Reason number 2, you just don't have that much time. On average, as you move through middle school and high school and college, you are going to have 7 other classes to worry about, extracurriculars, sports, life in general, and math, just like every other one of your classes, is a very small slice out of all of that. And so even if you get straight A's as you move through your classes, you are oftentimes going to come away from those classes feeling like you have a surface level understanding of the content. And that is perfectly okay. We live in the golden age of information. There's so much to learn about every single topic. And so it's just one of those things that you should expect as you kind of move through your math classes. You can imagine if you get B's or C's, that feeling will just be even more exaggerated. We're going to talk about why this is the case in reason 4, 6, 8, and 9 as we move through this video. Most classes, math included, are just an introduction to the topic. 99.9% of students, after you leave high school and college, you will never see math ever again. I teach math for a living, and I hardly ever see math in my real life. So the big thing you really want to take away from your math classes is the mathematical mind, mathematical approach. We'll talk about that in reason number 6. And if you have a general understanding of the field, you're doing perfectly fine. That's really all you should be taking away from each of your classes. Reason number 3, it may not be difficult. It could just be rare. You're going to encounter a lot of questions as you move through your math classes that will seem like they're testing your math ability, but they actually say very little about your math skill. And you might guess why that's true for this question. Math like this just does not show up in math classes, at least not after 3rd or 4th grade, and it definitely doesn't show up like this in real life. And you might guess why. It's because, if we put it in parentheses, we can take this expression and make it much more explicit of what we're trying to do. And math is a language. We try to communicate as explicitly as possible. We could take that same question, we could remove the addition, and we could put in division. And, now even if you've done a calculus class, you might be kind of wondering, is order of operations left to right or right to left? And so if that's too easy, we could increase the level of difficulty again, basically testing ever more obscure rules of the order of operations. And the takeaway here is that there are uncommon parts of the math language that you're not going to use that much. And if you spend a lot of time on those parts of math, you're going to feel like your skills aren't growing, and that math is really difficult. Another example of this is this now infamous SAT question that no one answered correctly, not even the test makers themselves. And there's kind of, 3 big takeaways here. These questions that we're seeing, we can call them rare question types. They, 1, don't say anything about your math ability. It's an uncommon part of the language. Number 2 is that it's building skills that you will likely never ever see again in another math class or in real life. And number 3, these questions can often be a huge time sink. You can spend hours on a single question only to again realize that you're never going to use this skill ever again. And so as you can imagine, with all of those 3 things together, you can feel like math is really hard, that you're unable to answer math questions at a really low grade level, and that all these skills you're building are never seen again, so you're not making any progress. In order to kind of combat, these rare question types that can make learning math difficult, teachers should, 1, be reviewing their content meticulously before they assign it to you in homeworks and tests. That will not always happen. They are human after all. And then number 2 is the second best defense against this is kind of to cheat, and we'll talk about cheating in reason number 5. Reason number 4, oftentimes it doesn't make more sense, it just becomes more familiar. If you're watching this video, you probably speak English with a pretty decent level of fluency, and with enough practice, math becomes the same way. You will become fluent in it, it will become effortless to use, like second nature. But much in the same way, just like you can't explain the foundations of English, like, the rules of grammar and phonics.
So this word is ear, which means this word is beer. No, it's bear. You don't see how? It's because it's ear with a B. Bear. That's why. Which means this word would be bared? No.
Math notation is a language in much the same way, and it is full of the same amount of quirks and oddities and unexplainable rules as any other language. And you're going to see this over and over again as you move through your classes. Just some concrete examples of this. You're going to see, the -1 power. It's used ambiguously as the reciprocal function and the inverse function. Algebra is really elegant and beautiful until you get to inequalities. And then every single one of these questions is a big mess of secret steps and tricks you have to remember and triple checking your answers because the solution for one problem kind of sort of works for this next problem, but not really that well. You'll get to radians in high school, and radians will never be as easy to use as degrees. They're kind of counterintuitive and weird, and pi is defined incorrectly. And so no matter how much you use them, and no matter how good you get at using them, they will always feel slightly unwieldy and slightly clumsy to use. And so again, that's just a couple examples. This is going to happen throughout all of your math classes. You should always ask questions and dig deeper. This should not be used as an excuse to not learn the material thoroughly. But sometimes if you're sitting with a piece of content and it's not making that much sense, you might just need to move on, and you can always come back to it later. Reason number 5, you're not cheating enough. As we discussed previously with rare question types, they are going to be the bane of your existence as a student as you move through your math classes. And the best defense against that is to cheat. A lot of students, when they're working through their homeworks and practice, they will try to solve every single question on their own with no external help, and that could be a very inefficient way to study. The way that you get good at math is not by having innate math ability, it's by seeing a large volume of questions and a large volume of solutions and a huge range of topics in mathematics. And that way we're kind of like large language models or generative AI, you could kind of say that. It's by seeing a huge amount of questions and solutions and math topics that you build up this big, complex web of understanding of mathematics, and it's out of that big web that your brilliance and your genius emerges. And so in order to develop a big complex web like that, you need to keep moving to see as much content as possible, and the only way to do that is to have solutions with you as you move through your homeworks. Your teacher may or may not subscribe to this good cheating method of learning, and if that's so, you might have to go and purchase your own solution manual, or you might have to go and purchase a second textbook with a solution manual, do all your practice over there, and then bring that into your teacher's homeworks and practice sessions. Your momentum as a student is probably your biggest asset, and so as much as possible, you want to make sure that you're not spending too much time in one single spot, one single question, or one single topic, and that you just keep moving. Reason number 6. Formulas are often the end of learning, not the beginning. At the start of a class or the start of a chapter in a textbook, you will often be presented with a formula, let's say the binomial theorem, and you should just know that this is the ending location. It is the finish line. It's the culmination of a whole lot of work. It's kind of like, jumping to the concluding paragraph of an essay. And so if you start there, it can feel like a really backwards way to learn math. If we talk about, again, the binomial theorem, where we'd actually probably start with a topic like that is taking binomials and expanding them out and doing lots of rote practice and seeing lots and lots and lots of examples. And so as we're doing all of that practice, we're starting to make observations. In this case, we might say, oh, we notice the number of terms is 1 greater than the power that the binomial is raised to. Or we notice Pascal's triangle is showing up here as the numbers, the coefficients in front of the terms. Or the exponents are increasing and decreasing from left to right. And as we're making these observations, doing rote practice, we're also, building skills and rebuilding old skills because we're constantly forgetting, things like torics and sigma notation and exponent properties and distribution and algebra. And as we're doing all that practice, it's moving into our system 1 thinking. It's becoming so easy, it's almost second nature. We're becoming kind of bored of doing the math. And at this point, we're kind of noticing patterns, and we're also starting to make predictions and look for shortcuts of how we can do the math. And in this specific case, we might be saying, well, what would happen with negative powers or fractional powers or negative fractional powers? And that would lead into really big math topics like Taylor series and geometric sequences and the definition of pi and areas in the curves and calculus and all of these things. And all of that is being summarized, again, by this binomial theorem. And so you can kind of see why it'd be a bad idea to start there with your learning. Now, of course, you can get lots of understanding from a topic by just doing the rote practice, but oftentimes it makes much more sense to step through math, starting with the question, moving to the exploration, and then finally getting to this final result, which kind of takes us into a small rant on mathematics, and that unfortunately, in a lot of classes nowadays, the question and exploration phase of mathematics is the first thing that gets chopped off when there are time constraints, which is really unfortunate because that is really at its core the heart of mathematics. It's the mathematical mind that we want students to develop, their visual spatial reasoning and logic, but really their ability to look at the real world or look at just pure mathematics like binomials as they're being expanded and look for patterns and trying to make predictions about where these patterns could go. So just know it's a huge disservice to students. It's kind of a big problem with the modern classroom, and you're going to notice it kind of over and over again as you move through your math classes. Keeping in mind that formulas are the end of learning, not the beginning. Don't let your teacher pressure you into going into a textbook and deciphering sometimes very dense formulas like this one. You can watch a video on how to pull that apart on the channel. There's something to be said about teaching yourself content from a textbook. There's definitely some benefit to that, but it's much better to find resources for dummies, for kids, find videos that will step you through the content slowly but surely and break the complex ideas down into smaller bite-sized pieces. Again, this is also going to be a reason why when you leave your math classes, if you're starting at the end, jumping straight to the end result, why you'll leave your math classes feeling like you have a surface level understanding of the content. Reason number 7, sometimes your math teacher doesn't know the answer. It's true. Sometimes we don't know the answer and we won't admit it. And it basically comes down to ego. We'll talk about that in reason number 10. Sometimes it's inexperience as a teacher. Sometimes it's rare question types like we talked about before. The math level is really low, but the solution is really counterintuitive. It could be like the 10,000 a day rule. The teacher, just by random chance, hasn't seen a really simple question before, and they might need like a minute to think about it. But whatever the reason is, teachers really have 2 options to, respond to not knowing an answer, and that is to 1, say that they don't know the answer to the question, which is the correct answer. Number 2 is they can pretend to know the answer, which unfortunately happens more often than not. And the teacher will say something like, oh, it's a really simple solution. It's really trivial. Or they might say, you should know this from a previous class. We're not going to talk about it. Or we don't have time to cover this in class. Or some variation on that. If they're giving you answers that leave you more confused than when you initially asked the question, there's a very good chance that they do not know the answer and you probably can just move on or try to ask them one-on-one after the class is over. On the positive side of things, seeing your teacher's knowledge gaps is a great reminder that we are all learning. It doesn't matter how much math you've done, it doesn't matter how long you've been teaching math, 10, 20 years, there's always going to be some math topic or math question that's going to come along and stump you. And that's a good reminder to always, keep or maintain a beginner's mindset. Reason number 8, math classes omit historical context. As we saw previously, oftentimes in a math class, you're going to skip over the question and the exploration and jump straight to the formula, the result. And another step that gets completely omitted is the historical context, unfortunately. If we're talking about a topic like logarithms, for instance, logarithms were used by astronomers to do really large calculations before the invention of the calculator, and nowadays we have computers. And so we don't really need logarithms in that way anymore. And oftentimes the historical context of logarithms is just left out of a class. A teacher's not going to take 30 minutes to an hour to talk about the history of logarithms when they could use that time to show you how to practice and use the formula. But the end result, of course, is that you're going to feel very disconnected from the math. You're going to feel like you have a surface level understanding of the math, and it's going to feel like the math just kind of falls out of thin air a lot of times. Another really great video to watch is the lore behind calculus, or the lore of calculus, and it talks about the order in which calculus was discovered versus the order in which we teach it today. And so a lot of times with content, we rearrange it to make it easier for students to learn. And in that same process, we obscure and hide all the original historical context. Again, the original motivations that these mathematicians had to invent and discover calculus in the way that we teach it and know it as it is today. Reason number 9, mastery requires multiple cycles of learning. Spaced repetition and active recall are getting a lot of positive attention nowadays, and you can watch a video like this to get up to speed. In a nutshell, every time you learn something, you exponentially forget that piece of information. And so if you learn it on day 0, by day 1, you've forgotten about half of it. By day 2, you've forgotten about 75% of it. And if you want to hold on to that information longer, you need to remember or recall that information on subsequent days. So you can kind of see in this curve, each of those green curves is you trying to recall or remember the information, and the curve flattens and you hold on to that information for longer. If you space those intervals at which you recall the information at just the right time intervals, you can put a lot of information into your long-term memory very efficiently. There's 3 big takeaways with spaced repetition and active recall, and that is 1, you are going to learn and forget a lot. That's a very healthy part of learning. 2, you are going to make a lot of mistakes, and you're going to repeat those mistakes a lot. Mistakes and forgetting can be a sign of skill regression, so you have to kind of differentiate, which one is which. And then 3 is cycles of learning, which is that for top students, oftentimes they will get multiple passes through the content. In a first pass, they can teach themselves the content and assign themselves homework. They can see it in class with their teacher, and that teacher will assign them homework. They can see it with the tutor, and that tutor will assign them homework. And then they can teach other students, maybe using the Feynman technique, and assign those students homework. And all that time spent doing math is great for building math skills. But additionally, each of those cycles of learning kind of comes with a new perspective on the content. Each teacher is going to teach it slightly differently. So the homework sets is going to be a little bit different, and the notational use in each of those cycles is also going to be a little bit different. And so that builds a really deep, really robust understanding of content. Most classes are only going to take you through probably 1 cycle or 1.5 cycles. And so this is, again, another reason why you're going to feel as you leave your classes that you have a surface level understanding of the content. Reason number 10, last but not least, math is human, humans are messy, and therefore by the transitive property, math is also going to be a little bit messy. And that's probably something you've noticed as we move through this video. Even if math itself is not messy, the way that it is taught and the way that you learn it will definitely be messy and human. Math oftentimes is presented as sometimes cold and objective and logical and unbiased and free from the messiness of humans and their complexities and emotions and all of those things. And that is a very noble and valuable pursuit, to have those elements in mathematics. But oftentimes we can kind of lose all the warmth and humanness that makes math fun and enjoyable and connects us to the topic. As math history has shown over and over again, century after century across a bunch of different continents and time periods, it's really been a struggle for humans to fight and make their ideas heard. And so that has come with no shortage of drama and intrigue and clashing egos and personalities and foundational mistakes like getting pi defined incorrectly, clashes with the church and the state. And some of that drama is going to make its way into every single one of the math classes that you enter. The first human that's going to make math more difficult for you is yourself. You're often your first and worst critic, and you can read more about that in this blog post, Fostering a Kinder Approach to Mathematics. The big takeaway from that blog post is that you are going to be incredibly brilliant and incredibly dumb, all throughout your math career. When you first start out, you're going to be more dumb than brilliant, and as you move through, you're going to be much more smart. But most of that smartness and brilliance is going to be surrounded by being a beginner, being dumb, feeling like these math topics you just cannot figure out, you just can't understand. If you can really embrace that feeling of being challenged and knowing that these topics are hard to understand and very abstract, you can relax and have a lot more fun with mathematics as you move through your classes. The second group of humans that's going to make learning math difficult for you is people from outside, your peers, colleagues, fellow classmates, teachers, professors. Everyone in technical fields feels the same way that you do when it comes to learning these abstract, difficult concepts. They're going to be struggling with feeling inadequate and dumb and not intelligent and questioning their self-worth, and all of those internal struggles that they are feeling are going to be pushed onto you sometimes. And if you can recognize it as a them problem and not a you problem, you can really take a step back and create a safe learning environment for yourself to explore, be a beginner, and not feel shame and embarrassment when you're repeating questions and making mistakes and things like that. My favorite quote is that people are really only as kind to you as they are to themselves. And so again, that can really just help you to take a step back and enjoy math and not worry too much about the negative judgments you receive from other people. The math environment, math culture, nerd culture can be unhelpful at times. Sometimes it can be a boys club. It can be sometimes really hyper competitive. Students won't disclose their support systems or showing how much time they're putting into math because to be seen trying is uncool. Stereotypes like Asians are good at math puts a lot of pressure on the high performing students, and the underperforming Asian students can feel even more behind than the average underperforming student. Don't let anyone label you as smart, and don't let your classmates or your teacher do that. It's a bunch of pressure, and it will make it so much harder, again, to stay a beginner, to make mistakes and ask questions, and just have fun with math. Women and minorities are underrepresented all across STEM, and in math that's no less different, and even more so in math history. Things have changed a lot since the 70s, but there's still a lot of work to do in that area. A lot of textbooks, teachers, online resources are just downright inaccessible to beginners. They will be labeled, as for dummies and for beginners and introductions to the content, and they will go right over your head. And it's not because you're dumb, it's because content is not taught that well. It's taught at too high of a level. There's kind of two big reasons why there's so many bad explanations online. One is that good explanations take a lot of time and effort to create and share with other people. And number two is that there's an incentive to put really high level math content online because it allows the creator to really show off their math skills and how smart they are. And you will see that a lot as you move through online spaces, unfortunately. There's kind of this weird phenomenon that happens that when you take a really complex topic and break it down into its really simplest, smallest baby steps, you will not feel that smart as an educator or as a teacher. And so if you are putting math content out there online, try to keep that kind of framework in mind for our beginner students, the students that are just taking their first couple of steps into math. It might seem easy and dumb to teach it at such a low level, but to those beginner students, it can make a world of difference. Reason number 11, our bonus reason, you just might not like math and or be good at it. And in fact, most students as they move through a math class are not going to fall madly in love with the topic, just like with any other class. But hopefully, you can rule out the above reasons that we talked about before in this video before you come to the conclusion that you dislike math or that you hate math or that it's not for you. And there are even more reasons. We could probably do a part 2 of this video. Some students will have learning differences like dyscalculia and dyslexia, and that will actually make learning math more difficult than for the average student. So if that's you, that's something to keep in mind. At the end of the day, after all, math is just a language out of thousands of languages, spoken, written, computer. So you really just might find that your passion lies in a different language, and that is perfectly okay too. Just don't let anyone convince you that math and the sciences is the only way to being smart and creative. That's just not true. What any math teacher, math educator really wants you to experience, whether it's in a math class or it's after you graduate, is to at some point appreciate that the mathematical mind, the mathematical approach, the way of looking at the world and coming up with these abstract models of it can be a really beautiful and interesting way to not only understand yourself, but also just the world around you. And that's probably the most important thing that you could take away from all of this or any math class that you're in. And that brings us to the end of this video. If you enjoyed, please like, please share, please subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment down below with something that made learning math more difficult than it should have been for you in the classroom, or easier than it should have been in the classroom. There are so many amazing educators and teachers and resources to highlight. Videos like these take so much time and effort, especially for me. I'm brand new to YouTube. I've been working on this basically all summer. I started writing in June. It is now early October. Oh my gosh. And it's been research, it's been writing, it's been trying to summarize all of my thoughts over the last decade of teaching, editing and re-editing, filming and refilming. It's a one-person team, and it is very rewarding, but it is a very slow and time-intensive process. If you have dollars to support, you can donate directly at the website. Everything on the website is free. Everything on this YouTube channel is free. You can buy merch on the Project Carver store. I made pie and towel stickers earlier this year, and I want to get some feedback on those items. So leave a comment down below what you think of the merch, what type of merch you want to see in the future. You can book a tutor session with me. My books are open all year round, and you can also become a Patreon. I just started one of those. This whole video is a blog post, and you can find all of the links to those things down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the very end, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.